Hey group, so this lesson here, we're going to talk a little bit about DNA and how it actually makes us us. So here's what I mean. So we know that DNA is this beautiful, amazing code, but how does it turn us into a person or a sheep or a dog or whatever? We're missing something here. So here's what I mean. So we now know that if you look at a sheep's DNA, right, it might say like T, G, C, T, and a whole bunch of other letters, right? Whereas a worm's DNA is going to have different letters, okay? It'll have G, T, G, G. So same letters, but in a different order, right? And that's why they look different. But I feel like we're missing something still. So how do a bunch of letters or chemicals turn into animals or hair or anything like that, right? So this is the analogy I'm going to use. I think it's very much the same way of like building a house. So if you look at here, these two houses are different, right? And the reason that they're different is because they have different blueprints. They have different codes. So this code says make this house, and this code says make this house. So when you have different codes or blueprints, ultimately you're going to end up creating different houses. The same way different DNA is going to make different molecules and different proteins in different animals, okay? But we're still missing something. So here's what I mean. So if all of a sudden I take this blueprint and I just put it down on a table, and then I just wait. If I wait and wait and wait, like a house isn't just going to magically appear. Okay, so there's other components, there's other players in the game. So what I mean by that is, so there's got to be someone who knows how to read the blueprint. Okay, there's got to be actual materials to make the house out of. There's got to be someone to build the house. And then there's even someone who's going to take the code and bring it to this guy who can build it, okay? So all these components have to come together to actually build a house. I can't just put a piece of paper on a desk and hope that a house just magically appears. And the same goes for DNA. You can't just have DNA and all of a sudden think that it's just going to build a person or a worm or so on and so forth, okay? So ultimately, instead of a house in DNA world, they're called proteins. Okay, and a lot of times we think of protein like when we eat meat, we get protein, but protein is basically what makes us us, okay? Like what makes our hair is protein, and inside of our bones is protein, and our digestive enzymes is protein, and so basically proteins are us, okay? We are made of all different proteins. So the same thing goes. How does a DNA molecule magically turn into a house or a protein? So we still have the same four players of the game, okay? Only instead of wood for building a house, the amino acids. Those are the little building blocks of protein, okay? They're called the building blocks of protein. They are the little pieces that make up protein, okay? There is this thing called tRNA, which stands for transfer RNA. They are the builders. They're the ones who are going to be in charge of bringing and putting together the amino acid. The other player of the game is this guy called a ribosome, okay? And he is the guy who can read this code. And then there's something called mRNA, or messenger RNA, and they're the person who takes the code and brings it to the ribosome, okay? This will all make sense in a little bit, but these are the four players of the game, and these all exist inside one cell, amongst other things as well. But inside one cell, all these things are happening. So let's take a look at how this actually works, right? All right, so we know we are in a big old cell here, and then the DNA is inside the nucleus. That's where the DNA lives, all right? And what I want to show you here is this is called a gene. Okay, this is just a small section of DNA that basically is the blueprint that's going to make a certain protein. So maybe this is the gene for collagen, which is a common protein inside of our body. So here's how it works, ready? The DNA says, all right, I got the code, let's make the collagen. And the ribosome says, awesome, send me the code so I can read it and put this thing together. And the DNA is like, sorry ribosome, I'm stuck in the nucleus, I'm not allowed to leave. And the ribosome says, well, I am not allowed in the nucleus. What are we going to do? Luckily, they have a plan. So here's what they do first. So the first thing that happens is the DNA, the part they want to take and make the collagen, literally unzips. It splits apart. And the first player of our game comes into play, the mRNA. He says, don't worry guys, I got this. I'm just going to make a copy of your DNA, a little photocopy, and if you look at me, I'm only half a strand of DNA basically. So I'm small enough that I can actually fit through the nuclear membrane and I can leave. So the first step is it unzips, the RNA makes a copy, and it's able to actually leave the nucleus. And it says, don't worry ribosome, I got the code, here I come. So it comes on over to the ribosome and it has the code from the DNA. The ribosome says, sweet, this is great, let's read the code and start making this amino acid, or making this protein. So what it does is it reads the letters 3 at a time and says, reads them and says, all right, we need to have the yellow amino acid. So the tRNA pulls a yellow amino acid that's floating around the cell and says, I got this, I'll bring it on over. So the tRNA brings over the yellow amino acid. And then it reads 3 more letters and says, all right, now we need a red amino acid. So tRNA goes and grabs a red amino acid. And then it reads 3 more letters and says, we need a green one, and it brings it over. We need a red one, brings it over. We need a blue one. So what happens is it reads the code 3 letters at a time, and every 3 letters stands for a different amino acid. So it knows which one to go together. And what's really cool is that each protein just has to do with the amino acids that are arranged together. So in the end, you end up with a protein, okay? That is our hair color, our eye color, or whatever else, okay? So that's it. That's how DNA ultimately turns from a blueprint into an actual something, is this whole process. So let's recap it real quick, just in case it was a little tricky, okay? So part of the DNA unzips. The mRNA comes in, makes a copy of it, and it's small enough that it can leave the nucleus and brings the copy of the code to the ribosome. The ribosome then says, all right, I'll read 3 letters. Oh, we need a certain amino acid, and it uses the tRNA to bring over the amino acids. So it keeps on reading 3, calling them over, reading 3 and calling them over until ultimately you have all the amino acids. It's read the whole code, and all the amino acids come together and they make a protein. So that's it. That's DNA protein synthesis, okay? A little tricky, but hopefully understandable. And that's how DNA makes us, us. Thanks for watching.